Before we start, maybe you could tell us all a bit about yourself. I think you're a familiar person to most of us. It's very good to see you. I haven't seen you for quite a while myself, actually. But for those who have not yet met you, give us
Yeah, I'm
the.
going to speak about it a little bit in this
Ah,
session as well,
okay.
actually. But yeah, I'll say I was, yeah, like as Chris said, I was a teacher in Bielsko-Biala. Probably I was there a year and a half ago now. It's like 2 school years ago, but currently I'm in Prague. I've been kind of working for International House in Prague off and on for about 10 years now since I did my CELTA here in 2011, which is crazy. Um, yeah, I'm currently the manager for young learner and teen classes here, so I'm quite busy at the moment.
I can only imagine. Gosh. Yeah, I
It's
have a
been an
lot of respect
interesting
for
year.
people who take on management roles. I don't know if I could do it myself. It's hard work.
Yeah, I started this in the middle of the summer, so in the middle of a pandemic year is not the ideal time, I'd say. But
No.
it's been challenging, but I guess I've learned a lot.
And you're going to be telling us what you've learned a little bit, I suppose, in this
Yeah.
closing plenary. I think this is the ideal talk to close our teacher training day with. So, Chris Bain, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, yep. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so yeah, I think this was when I was asked to come today to do the presentation. This was one of the first things I thought about when Ella told me that the topic was from the heart, and I think from the heart has really been the theme of this year for many people. I think lots of people have been kind of reevaluating a lot of things in their life, in their personal life and in their professional life this year. And I think for me, the one thing it kind of came back to was really thinking about myself, my teaching, how I am in the classroom, how I am with my other teachers. And really, this year gave me a chance to reevaluate a bit some of the beliefs and ideas that I've had for a long time. So I thought I'd start. I tried to find some kind of nice quotation from a book or some resource, a kind of definition of what teaching beliefs are, but I couldn't really find anything that I completely agreed with. So I tried sort of writing my own definition of teaching beliefs. So this is kind of how I view teaching beliefs, let's say. So I said, my teaching beliefs are my attitudes towards and expectations of what both I and my students do in the classroom. And this includes a whole load of things. Yeah, what materials we're using, what activities we're doing, the interaction patterns we have, the methods that I use to teach. And these attitudes and expectations, I think, are based on the observation and the experiences of myself and my students in general terms, not specific students, but just very general, the students that I've taught, and also the organizations I've been part of. And I've been really lucky in the last 10 years to work in a lot of really great schools where I think I've really learned a lot. And all these experiences and all this time kind of reflecting on my own practice has helped me a lot to kind of come up with what my beliefs are about teaching, or what they were about teaching at least. Yeah, so just I think very quickly, just to give a kind of broad context of where these beliefs came from. I mean, I've been involved with International House in Prague, but also in Budapest, also in Bielsko-Biala for the last almost 10 years. And in that time as well, I've also worked for other places. I've worked in Japan and in China for a number of universities in the UK. And also I spent some time in Greece working with refugees and teachers who were working with refugees. And so I think the beliefs that I've come to, or that I had come to by the beginning of this year, were really a result of all these experiences and all of these different kind of students that I've come into contact with. And I think I had, at the beginning of this year, really formed a strong idea of what my beliefs were about what it was to be a teacher and what it was to teach English and what it was to be effective in the classroom. So a little task, I'm going to show you actually some examples of teaching beliefs on the next slide. And I'd just like you to look at them, and based on your experience and your observations of yourself, because they'll be different from mine, but based on your experiences, just want you to see how strongly you would agree or disagree with these beliefs. So I'll give you just a moment to read them and think about where you would place yourself on this table. So I think when I was looking back at the kind of beginning of this year, let's say at least, and when I was thinking what my beliefs had been and what they were, these were the ones that I personally would say I most strongly agreed with. And like I said, I think for every person it's going to be different, and everyone will have different priorities in their beliefs about teaching based on the students they've come in contact with, based on the experiences that they've had. But these were the ones that I really would say I had strongly agreed with and identified with. And if you had asked me in January, you know, can you put down your 5 top teaching beliefs? These are the ones that I would probably have chosen. These are the ones that came most strongly to me when I was reflecting on it. So I think, you know, these were my beliefs at the start of this year, but obviously this year has just been a very, very special one. And so, yeah, I think that COVID-19 in the broader sense really affected me as a person this year. I think like most people, as I said before, there's been a lot of soul searching, a lot of reflection on where people are in their lives, in their careers, in terms of their family, their relationships with other people. And I think for me, this came through really strongly. I've spent a lot of time this year really thinking about my role as a family member, as a friend, and then also as a teacher, as a manager. I think a lot of things have been going through my head this year. And so part of the process that I went through was to take these ideas that I had about best practice and about my role as a teacher and kind of reevaluate them a bit in light of these brand new experiences that we were having. And so in terms of me, again, I think everybody's experiences this year have been different based on what country you were in, based on what kind of context you were teaching in, based on what age group you were with. I think everybody this year had a really different experience of COVID-19. But for example, for us here in Prague, it's been a year. And in the spring, we had a very strong lockdown, a very fast lockdown. Our lockdown happened here within a few days of the Italian one, when we only had a small handful of cases in the Czech Republic. So it was really a shock to the system. It was really really surprising, really scary when it happened here, because we didn't have any numbers of COVID cases, but somehow we ended up in a lockdown, which in the spring proved to be, I think, the perfect response, because we had a very short lockdown in the spring and we came out of it relatively early compared to the rest of Europe in early May. Unfortunately, our lockdown 2.0 in the autumn now, for anyone who's in the Czech Republic will know, has been much more difficult. Our numbers got extremely high during September, just as we were going back to school, really exceptionally high. At one point, the Czech Republic was the worst country in Europe in terms of number of new cases. So it really was a complete reversal of what happened in the spring, really. So now we're going through a much longer lockdown. We've already been in lockdown for about 6 weeks. So we'd only gone back to school, really, the high schools here had only gone back a number of weeks, 4 weeks maybe, when they were closed. So most of the high school students that we teach at IH Prague, really since mid-March, have only had 4 weeks in school this entire year, which I think is pretty short even by the standards in Europe. So the high schoolers really had a very short time in school. The primary schools had a bit longer, And now as of Monday, coming Monday, they're kind of slowly going back to school now. But really, we had a very long period very quickly into our term where we were closed. And I think almost everywhere in Europe now is teaching online again. So everyone's kind of in the same boat again. So yeah, in the spring, things were less maybe organized than they are now. I'd say we're in a better position now in the autumn to know how to handle online teaching and the transition out of the classroom. But in the spring, it was a very fast transition and very stressful, I would say. And I went from being somebody who had never taught a class online prior to March. I had done some lessons as a student online. I had done a lot of one-to-one lessons with me as the student through Skype and through Zoom as well, but I had never taught anything before March on online. So to go from that absolute zero to within a few days, I was teaching groups of 15 students on Skype. And at the beginning, because we just didn't know what to do, I was teaching them with no cameras, and they were 3-hour lessons. It's essentially a 3-hour phone call with 15 students. We were doing lessons on Zoom. I was teaching one student on WhatsApp because it was the only option for her. So really everything kind of was being done as we went. We just asked students, what do you want to do? Shall we go online? Okay, what platform shall we use? We didn't know which platform would be the best one. We were really, blind for it. Now in the autumn, I think we're more ready, we're more organized, we're doing all of our lessons on Zoom, but it's still a very big uphill learning experience. And so from this year, I really think that these key beliefs that I had have really been challenged in quite interesting ways, and in ways that have inspired me a bit this year, actually. So I thought I'd share a little bit how some of these beliefs that I had have changed a lot this year, and maybe see if you have a similar experience to me. So the first one I definitely think has seen a big change is this one. I would have said in the past that the teacher-student relationship, of course, should be friendly, but I always felt that there should be quite a strong distance between teachers and students. And I mean this not just in a professional, you're a teacher, they're a student kind of way, but really in a you are operating in different orbits. Yeah, the students are over here and the teacher is on the other side of this. And I know some people don't agree with this. Yeah, they think that, especially when you're teaching adults, it can be much more friendly in a, going to the pub together way, hanging out with them. But for me, it was never like this. I always felt that teachers and students should be quite distant from each other. And how I would change this now, thinking about the experiences I've had this year, and I was really trying to think what the word is that I would use instead of distant, and the word that kept coming back to me was that I think the teacher-student relationship should be full of empathy. And what I mean with this really ties back to what I heard Zuza talking about in one of the earlier sessions today, when she spoke about being vulnerable. And this really resonated with me, this word vulnerable, because I've never felt more exposed this year as a teacher than ever before. Like I said, we were doing lessons on WhatsApp, so I was giving my private phone number to students so that we could contact them. I was doing lessons in my bedroom because in the spring I was living in an apartment, really a studio, where my bedroom and workspace were the same thing. And so I tried to kind of create a distance between my living area and my work area, but it was really hard in quite a small space. So I think that I had to open myself up quite a lot to the students, and they also had to open themselves up a lot to me, So I shared a story in I think Alex's session when she was talking about the young children. I had one student who was 6 years old, and when we were doing a lesson in October, I asked the students, can you stand up? Okay, I want you to run and find something black. So they were going to show me in the camera something black, and behind him was a drying rack with all his family's clothes drying. And so this 6-year-old boy grabbed his mum's bra and was just waving it in front of the camera for, I'd say, a solid minute while everyone else was laughing and having a great time. And I just thought, wow, you know, like even this, like the parents, the students, everyone really is at their most vulnerable right now. There's no secrets, and you're really seeing into their lives in a way that you never would in the classroom. And they're also seeing into mine. And even I thought small things, like previously I would have never really moved lesson times around. So if a student was like, oh, I can't do Thursday at 1 o'clock, I'd be like, okay, so we'll cancel the lesson probably. But I think I tried to be much more empathetic towards them in the spring, and also now, where if a student said, you know, I can't do this time, can we do another time? I really kind of exposed how much free time I had, and I had to tell them a lot more about what was going on in my private life. So I just think everybody was so much more open during this period, and it's really changed how I view my relationship with students. I still don't think I'll probably be going to the pub with them all the time after this is over, but I definitely think I'll have a lot more empathy and I'll be a lot more open with them than I was before. And I think this is a really good thing, because I don't think that this distance that I thought was really important would not have been effective in the lockdowns that we've had. And I think I wouldn't have been able to be as good a teacher if I'd tried to keep this really strong distance from the students. So I think this was a really, you know, eye-opening thing for me, that I think I'm not going to think of it as distance anymore, but just as everybody being quite empathetic towards each other, because we're all going through things right now. Everyone's going through the same thing, but another time, you know, you don't know what a student could be going through. So it's been really interesting for me in this sense. Okay, the second one that I kind of had really strong feelings about this one as well, because technology is nothing new. Teaching online is nothing new. All of these resources and websites that we're using, they've been around for a long time. Yeah, but I've always been a bit reluctant to use them because I felt that they were just substituting face-to-face lessons. So I always thought, oh yeah, okay, we can use technology, but oh, it's just passing off the activity that we can do with them onto a computer, and that's no good. But I think for, again, so many people this year, I think that we've realized really how fantastic a complement technology is to face-to-face teaching. I don't think it needs to replace it. And I think this was one fear that I did have, was that technology would somehow replace face-to-face teaching and teachers. That, oh, if they can do it online, then why do they need us to be there with them? And I think that was the wrong attitude to have, because I think they still need us, because we're the ones that can find the useful technology, that can decide how to use it in the class, that can make it pedagogically meaningful. So I think you still need all the skills in a human, real teacher. But this technology that we've got is such a great resource that we can use when we are doing face-to-face teaching. So I think maybe in the past, not scared, I think scared is not the right word, but I think I was reluctant to accept that technology could be a part of a lesson, because for me, it was like giving away something of the human aspect of teaching. And I think I didn't need to think of it this way. And there's so many great websites, great resources that I found this year that I'll definitely be using again in the future, even when we go back to face-to-face teaching, because I really think face-to-face teaching is important and meaningful, but there'll definitely be an increase, I think, going forward in hybrid learning, in a mixture of online and face-to-face learning. And I think it's great that I've had this experience, even though it's been a very traumatic year. It's been great to have this time, in a way, to really focus on the positive aspects of technology and how it connects to education. And so I'm really pleased that now, at least, I have this knowledge of what technology is good, what technology is useful, what technology I would like to use going forward, even what technology I don't like, what websites I don't think are very useful. And I would have never had this knowledge before this. So I think it's really important to think of technology as a helper rather than stealing something from the classroom experience. So I think this is another very important change that I've experienced this year. Okay, so the third one, planning. So this is, yeah, this is something I really felt strongly about as well. Was that when you're planning a lesson, you know, every part of the lesson, we really need to give so much thought to it. And, you know, is this going to be really meaningful and useful for the students? Does it connect with everything else in the lesson? Does it, you build towards the goal? Is there a clear aim? And maybe I felt like strongly when you'd see a lesson with some part of it that didn't seem to have any clear connection to the main aim, maybe I was a bit judgmental about this. Like, why is this teacher or why am I kind of doing this part of the lesson? It doesn't connect to anything meaningful in the lesson. But maybe I think it doesn't matter as much as I thought it did, that every single thing in a lesson is so meaningful towards the aim that we're going for. So how I thought I would reword this is maybe flexibility and confidence is key to meaningful learning. And I think both of these things feed into planning. So if you can be very flexible as a teacher, I think your planning will be so much better. If you are really confident with all the skills that you need for the classroom, I think that your planning will be much better. So I think now, going forward, when I think, oh, you know, we need to really help the teachers with lesson planning and how to structure a lesson, yeah, I don't think we should throw all these things out the window. I don't think we should stop worrying about aims and about logical progress. These things are important in a lesson. But I also think it's important that we have teachers who can be flexible, who can understand that things can go wrong. And if they do, it's not a massive problem. And we can give them the confidence to deal with those problems as they come up. Just one example, actually last week, I had a lesson with a group of students, 7 years old, and I'd prepared a PowerPoint. I thought it was a very nice PowerPoint. Yeah, we had a lot of nice activities on it. Everything was going to be fine. So I'd planned the lesson really carefully. Every stage of it, it was going to be fine. And then the lesson started. I welcomed the students. We did the routine at the start of the lesson. I gave them some stars. We went over the rules. I said, okay, guys, I'm going to open the PowerPoint. And I opened it, and there was nothing there on the PowerPoint. I don't know what I'd done. Clearly, I'd closed the PowerPoint without saving anything that I had done previously. And at that moment of just pure shock, and they must have seen it, you know, they must have seen my face. I must have started sweating. I must have like visibly panicked. And I think the only equivalent I can think of in terms of face-to-face is if you turn up to a lesson and you open your bag and you suddenly realize you don't have anything with you. You didn't bring your flashcards. You didn't bring your pens and paper. And then suddenly you're in this situation where you're with the students and all that planning you did is just completely gone. And I think that for me, having the flexibility where I was thinking, oh, I don't have any of the resources or things that I was going to do. Okay, fine, I can't just end the call and stop the lesson because I don't have my PowerPoint. I have to just keep going with it. And I think that through this experience where we've just had to be really flexible with students and with the kind of experiences that we've gone through this year, have really shown teachers the value of knowing what you're doing in the classroom, being confident with it, but also being really flexible that if something goes wrong or if you realize that students aren't interested, you have that ability to change to something else. So I think going forward, planning is something I'll give less strength to when I'm talking to teachers than trying to build their confidence in terms of just being in a class and thinking, okay, something's going wrong here, even though it should go right, you know, even though the plan has been so well made, even though the ideas are so good, even though it's so logical, it's still going wrong for whatever reason. And okay, how can we be flexible and adapt with this? So I think these are really key things that I want to instill in my teachers going forward to, yes, plan, of course, be ready for your lessons, but be ready for things to go wrong. So many things have gone wrong this year, and we've had to really, you know, adapt as we've gone along. Okay, the fourth thing that I said, good working relationships with colleagues benefits teachers and students. It's an obvious one. I don't think anybody would have disagreed with this one. I think that I still believe this, but maybe I would change it a little bit, and I would say that deep and meaningful cooperation with colleagues benefits teachers and students. So I think, yeah, the working relationship is important. But for me, I think before, I always thought of it as, you know, a nice atmosphere. So everyone gets on really well in the staff room. There's a nice dynamic in the office. And this is a good relationship. And then people are happy to go to work. And then when they're happy to go to work, they do good lessons and they're good for the students. But I think this year I've seen it go so much deeper than this. And it's something I spoke about at another conference recently, where I think we were in a really unique situation this year where managers knew as little or less about what to do this year than the teachers that they were managing. And I think this opened up this whole new dynamic in the staff room where colleagues and teachers, they weren't just, you know, friendly and on good terms, but they really had to cooperate with each other to figure out how they were going to make this all work. And I've made such deeper connections with my colleagues this year than I ever had before. And I think this is something I'm going to work so hard on going forward myself, you know, trying to have these deep connections with colleagues, but also trying to create it in my team and the teachers that I work with, because the cooperation is much more important, I think, than I thought it was. I always thought cooperation was important, maybe, you know, very generally, like sharing some materials if it went really well. But I think it needs to go deeper than this. I think there's a lot of challenges coming up. I think there's going to be a lot more online elements in the future, a lot more hybrid elements. And I think that working well with colleagues isn't going to be enough. I think you really have to be able to cooperate and problem solve together and come up with new ideas together for how to face these challenges we're going to have. And we're not even done yet. You know, lockdown is still continuing. We don't know if there's going to be a third lockdown next spring. We have no idea. But if there is, I think that these kind of connections are going to be really important for us as a team and for individual teachers to feel supported and safe. And I think that this safety is really key as well, that the teachers need to feel safe in the environment that they're in. And I think that that comes from cooperation and knowing that not only do they have colleagues that they're friendly with, but colleagues that will support them and help them and will listen to them and will work with them on the problems that they're having. And then the last one, so I said innovation and creativity are important in the classroom. And it's another one I think that probably not many people would disagree with this. I think it's quite an obvious one almost. And maybe you would say, but how have you changed your mind on this? Because of course, this is still even more true than ever. And I think it's even more true than ever, yes. So the only way I would change this is maybe to say, I think innovation and creativity are essential in the classroom. And this is really something, you know, this year, as I said in March, I had no idea how I was going to teach an online lesson. And now in November this year, I've probably taught over 400 hours of online classes. 400 hours in 1 year, when before March, I had never taught anything. And I think all year I've had to really innovate and really come up with new ideas, find new resources, find new ways of doing things when there were limited resources, because I think in March there really was very little that I could find anyway to give my teachers and to use myself to help me with online teaching. So I think that this year has been a whole year of trying to be innovative and trying to be creative. And for the most part, it's worked so well. And it's something that, again, going forward, I think we're going to need more and more of. And we're going to have to be prepared more and more to innovate, because students now are more savvy to the benefits of online learning and to the options that online learning gives them. And so, yeah, well, I think it was important before. Now I think it's really essential that we're constantly coming up with new ideas, new ways to present things to students, and new ways to interact with them in this new world that I think we're going into. And I think this is really exciting. As somebody like me who's been teaching for 10 years, and I really thought I'd kind of seen it all and kind of knew what to expect in every situation. It's quite exciting to be part of this now, this first wave of EFL teaching, really mainstream, going online and being taught in lots of different ways, and being some of the first to experiment with different kinds of online teaching and the first ones to present on these and to share our ideas with other people and to help the next group of teachers that are starting to come in now who are doing their CELTAs, who are coming into a totally different teaching landscape to the one I came into 10 years ago. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's really kind of reinvigorated me in a way from where I was at the start of this year, where I really thought, yeah, teaching, I know what I'm doing. Everything's fine. There's no questions that I could be asked that I wouldn't know the answer to. Now this year, there were many questions I didn't know the answer to. And so it was really a good challenge to come through this year. So these are the key things. Like I said, like I've not changed my beliefs maybe like enormously, not drastically, but lots and lots of small changes, really important ones, I think, that have changed me as a teacher this year. So maybe just to summarize, thinking just really in general this year about what I've learned and how I've changed as a person even. I think I have much more respect and compassion and affection for myself and also my students and my colleagues. I think that me and all my colleagues had a really hard year this year. And I don't just mean my colleagues in Prague. I mean everybody that's at this conference today, everybody that's been going to every conference this month to try to get ideas for online teaching. I think all of us have had a really, really tough year. And I think for a lot of language school teachers especially, we've really been expected to just carry on as if nothing had happened. Even in the primary schools in the Czech Republic, for example, the teaching load has been reduced. So the teachers are only teaching half of what they were doing face-to-face. So an hour-long English class now becomes a 30-minute English class. This wasn't an option for us. So it's great, you know, in the primary schools here in Prague, if you have 6-year-olds, you do a 30-minute lesson with them. We still have to do 90 minutes at our school because that's what they paid for and that's what they expect from us. So I think that we as EFL teachers have really had to just carry on as if nothing had happened, even though everything was different. So much respect. And for the students also, who really have thrown themselves into it as well, even the ones that were reluctant, even the ones who are exhausted and have Zoom fatigue, they've all kept coming to lessons, they've kept being motivated, and they've really helped me through this year as well. And this connects to, you know, I have a greater admiration for the profession we work in and how vital it is for our students. I have a lot of students, one-to-one students especially, who before the spring, you know, maybe every now and again they would cancel a lesson, and most of them have never cancelled a lesson since the spring. And I think that in some ways we really provide some consistency, some support for them, some window out of all this drama that everyone's gone through this year. And I've had brilliant lessons with my one-to-one students this year, where even though we've just gone into another lockdown and we're really exhausted by everything and we feel really sad and a bit scared, we still just have fun for this hour of English every week, because what else are we going to do? And I think it's great. And I think not just English teaching, any kind of language teaching, I think this year has been so meaningful, more meaningful than normal to the teachers and the students. As I said a moment ago, yeah, I've been reinvigorated with new ideas, new aspirations, new aims for my career and also my department. We've made so many changes in the Young Learner department here in Prague this year. And I don't know if we would have had these changes without COVID, because I think for a long time, a lot of schools were just kind of doing the same thing year after year. Certainly our school was doing similar things every year. And this year has been a chance for a reset. And this has been really exciting. Yeah, to do lots of new, different things that we would have never done before. It's kind of been forced on us because we had to adapt to this situation, but it's really exciting to be able to get this chance to try things a different way. And I think last, and maybe the most important one, I just think I've become a better teacher. I think that this year really, for all the negatives, has really been an important year to reevaluate lots of things, to reevaluate my beliefs and my attitudes, and also what I do in the classroom. And ultimately, I think I'm a better person for it. So it's been an awful year. It's still an awful year. I think everybody is still having a hard time this year. But I think we're almost out of it now. Hopefully there is a light at the end of this tunnel coming soon. And I think that next year, really, we will see the benefits of the good things that have come out of this experience. I hope, at least. So yeah, I really hope for a better 2021, and hopefully I can take all of these new beliefs and keep putting them into practice and hopefully developing more and more in the year ahead. So thanks very much for listening. I really appreciate being part of this. I really want to thank Chris and Ella for inviting me to come here today. It's been really nostalgic as somebody who used to work at Bielsko-Biala and really enjoyed working there. As someone who's been part of International House for 10 years, it's really special to come here and speak today. And yeah, thank you so much for coming to listen to me.